or the other. We've also seen things like four-stroke engines, which we use in various kinds of applications. There is also this, I wanted to show some pictures, but unfortunately I won't be able to do that. So at the turn of the 20th century, there was a question, right, about two different regimes of physics. One was physics at a very high velocity, right, when things are moving extremely fast, right, when we are moving at almost the speed of light, let's say, which I'll not be touching upon. What happens to physics? Does it remain the same? Do we have to think of things a little differently, right? So physics always works with this idea of empirical testability, right? So if you see something which is different or divergent from the rules that are holding sway at the moment, then one has to obviously formulate something which is novel, which does incorporate what has to be incorporated. The other aspect of, or the regime of physics which had been explored at that time was the minutest of reality, right? When we are going down very much in scale, right? When we are talking about very, very small systems, right? What happens to the physics thereof, right? So in the 19th century, late part of 19th century and early 20th century, there were a number of experiments that showed that classical physics was not sufficient to describe what is the quantum side of things, as it later got to be called, right? So in this aspect, I would like to bring to your attention two people's names, right, and then move on to what it actually means. Why is it different from classical physics, right? So we have this gentleman by the name of Ludwig Boltzmann, right? Some of you may have come across Boltzmann's laws, Boltzmann's formulations. So he said, for the first time, at least recorded and in a big way, that energy states, right, energy, as it is in nature, as it is in various different kinds of systems, can be discrete, right? So when we talk about energy, we think about a continuous flow of energy, right? There is a continuum of energy, so to say. But in certain kinds of systems, that was not to be, right? So there was this idea that energy states can be discrete, right? And thereafter, Max Planck in 1900 came across with this idea that there are these systems that oscillate energy, right? That oscillate, and in consequence, they also emit energy. So the energy of oscillators in a very specific kind of system called a black body, right? A black body is something which radiates and accepts radiation perfectly, right? So a black body, the energy of oscillators are quantized, right? And then thereafter, in about 4 or 5 years' time, we got this very well-known gentleman by the name of Albert Einstein, right? And he took a massive leap of faith, in a manner of speaking, scientifically so. He said it's not the oscillator, but it's the very nature of light itself that can be quantized, that can be put into packets of, let's say, energy, momentum. There are various other variables that can be looked at, right? So in 1905, there was this set of papers, the 4 papers, which he published, and that year was called as Annus Mirabilis, the year of the miracles, right? Annus Mirabilis. There he had published things on relativity, general and special relativity. Then there was Brownian motion, as well as this idea of the photoelectric effect, which was connected to quantum mechanics, right? Now, before I go into the formulation of quantum mechanics, I would just like to highlight one aspect. Sometimes in our bid to be physicalist in our perception, that is what we are looking at, we want to describe it, and we think that we know the premise thereof, we are at times arrogant, right? And I just want to highlight, because as a physicist, I would like to see, and we have various theories that define different kinds of phenomena, and we are open to kind of discussing that and looking at the various nuances thereof. But at the turn of the 20th century, there was a certain degree of arrogance in this community of physicists, right? And I would like to just highlight that, not actually hitting at my own community as such, but just to kind of contextualize the discussion thereof, right? So Albert Michelson, he in 1894 said that all of physics is more or less understood, right? Till the sixth place of decimals thereof, right? Till we have some measuring devices that do things better, and therefore we will be able to explain most of the things that are not explicable still, right? So in this regard, there was a massive shift that happened. And we found that the material world, at the very basic level, at the level of the minutest of particles, number one, is not deterministic, right? Determinism is something which may not hold true all the way, right? What do I mean by that? That there was a discussion that if I repeat an experiment many times, right, I should not be expecting new things, right? In quantum physics, you should expect new things, right? Within a certain framework, of course, right, of eigenstates and so on. Right? So there is a certain aspect of probabilistic nature of reality. So if you do multiple runs of the same experiment, you could have different outcomes thereof, right? Now, that is a very, very counterintuitive idea, right? What does it even mean? Why should I repeat a certain experiment and every time, or maybe a certain set of times at least, why should I have a different set of outcomes, right? So there was this element of probabilistic aspect of things, which was made to be primary, right? Which was seen to be primary, rather, right? Then there was also this idea that nothing can be explained with a set of variables completely, right? So there was this idea, you may have heard about this gentleman by the name of Niels Bohr, right? Niels Bohr, he was somebody who had lots of debates with Albert Einstein, right, in the early part of the 20th century. So he said complementarity is something which is integral to nature, right? What do I mean by that? That there are certain sets of properties, right, like position and momentum, right? They together kind of give us an idea of reality, right? But by themselves, they cannot completely define reality as such, right? There are some constraints thereof which have to be taken into consideration, right? But what is most fascinating, and that is where my research has been in and what fascinates me immensely, I'm sure there are others who will share my enthusiasm for it, is the idea of entanglement, right? Some of you may have seen in science talks, in various TED talks about entanglement. So what is entanglement, right? So entanglement, in around 1935, Schrödinger, who was one of the pioneers of quantum mechanics, and there was this triumvirate of EPR, Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen, gave this idea that there are certain ways in which non-locally, what do I mean by non-locally? Local means what? In a certain vicinity, right? Local, as in common parlance we know, right? In a certain vicinity. In physics, we define locality in terms of certain constraints, which are relativistic and so on and so forth, but I'll not go into that. It said that things can be connected, right? They can be quote-unquote connected, right? Even when they are very far apart from each other, right? They are non-locally connected, right? Now, how did this come about? There were certain experiments, thought experiments, which had been taking place in the early part of the 20th century, and they found that there were these aspects which showed that if I took two particles, let's say, right, and I had some properties of these particles, and I took them very far apart, right? I took one, I kept one here, I sent one away to another galaxy, right? There is a manner in which there is a connection, right, a correlation, so to say, right, whereby if I were to measure the property of the particle out here, right, then there will be an instantaneous, almost, determination of what the property of the other particle, which is in the other galaxy, will be, right? Now, the thing is, there are some questions which many of the undergraduate physics students ask. Does this violate relativity? Not quite, because if you use this phenomena in some kind of protocol, like there is this protocol called teleportation, right? You are sending something to somewhere far away, right? There are certain kinds of measurements that have to be done which don't violate relativity. In all, it doesn't violate relativity. Anyway, the point is that there is a very interesting aspect of quantum mechanics. Actually, there are quite a few, right? I have mentioned about, let's say, the probabilistic aspect, right? There is the aspect of complementarity, which is very important, right? And there is also the aspect of entanglement, which is the connection that happens even if things were to be galaxies apart, right? In principle, of course, there are various other parameters that have to be taken into consideration. Now, what this raises in terms of a question is that if things get correlated, right, and it has been seen that systems and environment get correlated with each other as well, right? Things tend to lose their quantumness if they correlate with their environment, okay? So if that is the case, one question that comes to mind is, what is an individual, right? Can we even define an individual in the complete sense of the term, right? Because in quantum mechanics, the properties that define an individual, a particle, let's say, is often seen to be abstract, right? So when we say spin of a particle, right, it's not that there's a particle spinning, right? There is a more abstract sense of how it is. It's a mathematical kind of formalism to it, right? And so therefore, the whole idea of objective reality of the particle, number one, right, and the manner in which the properties correlate with it, right, is more nuanced than it was when we were talking about classical physics, for instance, right? So there are these elements which we have to think about, as well as the idea that what is it that is causing the non-local correlative aspect of the reality itself, right? So if I were to kind of go so far as to say, we could say that there is another dimension, right? Or there is another aspect, a hidden variable, if you believe in Einstein, which was debunked, by the way, right? But there are other aspects which have still not been conclusively understood, right? So in fact, there is a quote which says, if you say that you understand quantum mechanics, you probably don't, right? So that has been the usual zeitgeist of this age, right? So anyone who claims to be an expert of quantum mechanics is probably not an expert of quantum mechanics, right? So the point is that you have to understand this dualism of sorts, right? Which is a theory which people have spoken about, right? Whereby the idea of the principles that guide it, or guide a phenomena, in this case there are various kinds of matrix mechanics and so on and so forth, and the ontology of the objects themselves, right? What are the elements that are explaining this at the minutest of levels is what quantum logic and quantum physics looks at very closely so, right? And nowadays we have come across new applications of that in things like quantum computing, right? Some of you may have come across this term, quantum computing, where everything from Microsoft to Sony and various other companies are working on it. The idea is that if we were to use the power of the minutest of particles, right, there is immense computational ability thereof, right, in terms of miniaturization, in terms of efficiency, and in terms of the rate of transfer of information as well, right? So there are various nuances that have to be looked at, and I would look forward to the discussion that we have after this initial kind of statement, and also with Professor Roy's interjection, and also with the audience, because the idea of non-locality of what is realism, right, and what is objectivity, right, these three things are fundamentally questioned in many different aspects of quantum mechanics, right? Is there a reality, firstly, right? Is there an objective reality before we measure that particular system, right? Quantum mechanics says that the measurement of a system fundamentally defines how the system behaves thereafter, or what are the properties, what are the values of the properties that you will have thereafter, right? So clearly, there is an importance given to the act of measurement, right? And that has to be looked at more closely to understand how agency, right, or measurement takes a big role in quantum mechanics as such, right? So I will leave it at that for the moment, and I look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Guha. Now I request Professor Shishir Roy to talk about the same subject, ultimate reality of matter and energy.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. We are in a very difficult situation. I mean, when there is a concept of dialogue, it's like one-to-one conversation, and it is our traditions. Nochiketa, Setuketu, all what they did is a kind of dialogue. And my previous speaker, Mrityunjay, he set the stage for me, because I can skip many things, and I like to unveil some of the issues which are both common to physicists or scientists and as well as our traditional philosophers. In this context, Mrityunjay was talking about reality and quantum reality, of course, but it reminds me a very famous film, Japanese film. Its name is Rashomon, directed by famous person, Kurosawa. So, why I am talking about a film in this dialogue? Because in Rashomon, it was shown that a samurai was killed, and police team was inquiring who was the real culprit. So they took the statement of many people who had their own perception, and ultimately the police found that no two opinions are identical. So the question is, take-home message is that, is reality observer dependent? And this is the crux of the whole debate in quantum theory. Like, what happens, we see or we want to measure something, some attributes of a microscopic entity with a instrument, microscope, or maybe finer instruments, and then it comes to my, if we look visually, it comes to my eye, falls on the retina, then there are a lot of actions, channels, by which ions will be moving. Ultimately, it comes to central nervous systems. So, the biggest mathematician of 20th century, John von Neumann, he raised the issue that maybe ultimately kind of psyche, or they call mind, or we say consciousness, playing an important role in understanding the reality. In this context, let me tell you, I was reading a book called Drigdishya Viveka in Advaita Vedanta. So in Drigdishya Viveka, they consider the role of observer, object to be observed, and how the observation process happens. There, they said that consciousness is like Sakshi Chaitanya, means witnessing power. So, ultimately what we see that when we look that there is a superposition of the two states, like there is a very famous paradox called Schrödinger cat paradox. So what is that paradox? It paradox says that you put a cat inside a glass chamber and you close the chamber, then you slowly push poisonous gas into the chamber. So what will happen? Either cat will die or cat will be alive state. Now, if you open the chamber, then you will see whether cat is in a dead state or in the living state. So it is according to quantum principle called superposition principle, it will be superposed of the both cat, living and dead state. According to Advaita Vedanta, Drigdishya Viveka, if consciousness is like Sakshi Chaitanya, so the whole wave function of the superposed state is not collapsing into dead or living state, but we are witnessing what is happening. This is one school of thought. Another school, they think that this collapse of the wave function, because it is superposed state of the living and dead state, if you want to observe it, then it will be reduced to either dead state or living state. So according to other school, they think that because of the presence of consciousness, the wave function is reduced either of the states. Now the big question comes. Is consciousness energy or matter or nothing? According to Shaivaist school like Kashmiri Shaivism, they say ultimate reality is pure consciousness and energy. But they mention this energy is not like thermal energy, chemical energy, or like that. So the deep issue is that what is the ontology of energy? And people might say that ontology of energy is nothing but motion. But again the question comes, what is the ontology of motion? We scientists don't know. Maybe our Swamiji, they can enlighten us. Now another very, very important issue Mrityunjay raised, that non-locality or interconnectedness of the every entity in the universe. It said that every entity of the universe, they are connected to each other. And immediately the philosophers from Buddhist perspective, they say, well, this is said in our doctrine called Pratitta Samutpada, or dependent arising. Means every entity in this universe, they are causally connected. And because of one event, other event occurs. Also in Advaita Vedanta, as far as I understand, they say interconnectedness. But there are some subtle issues. For that we need a kind of intense interaction. What is the issue? Issues is that the scientists, when they say that two microscopic entities, like two electrons, they are put together in a particular state. And then, if you separate the two electrons apart, maybe even one in one galaxy, another in another galaxy, or even Chinese, they have shown it, that if you put one in satellite, one in Earth, even they are shown to be connected. But the issue is, two electrons are connected, right? Then two protons, another fundamental particle, they are also connected. Or two light quanta, two photons are connected. But one electron and one proton are not connected. One electron and one photon is not connected. So how can you say the universality of connectedness? That every entity in the universe, they are interconnected. There might be, and moreover, another issue is that we need kind of conditioning so that you can make a state, joint state of both the two entities. So we need to understand, we scientists need to understand before saying that it is related to Advaita Vedanta concept of interconnectedness or Pratitya Samutpada of Buddhist doctrine. We want to understand the different conditions of this kind of interconnectedness, and also whether there is any scope of kind of conditions so that you can prepare this kind of joint state. I don't know the answer. Maybe our Swamiji can open up a discussion what is meant by interconnectedness in Advaita Vedanta. And then I will say something about the different two doctrine of two realities. One is Vyavaharik Sattva, another is Paramarthik Sattva, conventional reality and ultimate reality. So, what is meant by conventional reality? This samsara or this world of material world of the different type of objects, etc. But what is ultimate reality? In science, especially in modern physics, we don't have these two truths, doctrine of two truths. We understand the one reality. So, is it possible, as I understand, that ultimate reality, one can have an experience, or how they can get it? Because, it's related to one basic concept, like how do you get knowledge? We scientists get knowledge through our sensory organs, 5 sensory organs, plus instruments. But what happens to our traditional scholar? As far as I understand, they call it like use sensory organs plus experience, and they are stuck. How do you think of experience in the framework of science? So we have many such queries. We don't know the answer. Maybe the problem of language also. We don't understand each other's language. And if we can clarify the lexicon, it may help. And there are other issues. Let me finish with this. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Professor Shishir Roy. I request now from the panel of traditional scholar, Professor Ramnath Jha, to present his view on ultimate reality and energy. Professor Jha is a professor in JNU, head of the Department Sanskrit and Philosophy, and under his tutelage, more than 40 students have acquired PhD and research. So, Professor Jha.
Hello. Respected Swamiji and other scientists and scholars on the dais and off the dais, there are so many questions and it has to be addressed from Shastric point of view. And I think we have so many sessions, 1 or 2 sessions, so it will come automatically. But what question has been posed by Professor Shishir Roy about methodology. So first of all, our rishis clarify that there are 2 layers of methodology. One is that is to be understood by our instruments. Our instrument in the sense of sense organ, other instruments, and general mind. So through that we can understand this gross reality. But if you want to go to the deeper state, then you have to change the methodology. So as per physical reality, light has the maximum speed. But our rishis even go to the state of refined mind. Yad jagrato dur mupaiti devam tadu suptasya tathaibeti. As per our rishi, mind has the highest speed. And that mind can be trained to capture even the subtle reality. तो जिसको प्रज्ञा कहते हैं अपने यहाँ, ऋतंभरा तत्र प्रज्ञा, योग सूत्र. ऋतंभरा मीन्स ऋतम सत्यम विभर्ति धारयति ऋतंभरा. 2 तरह के माइंड है. एक माइंड है जो ग्रॉस रियलिटी को कैप्चर करता है, लेकिन आपको यदि सटल रियलिटी तक जाना है तो आपको मन को रिफाइन करना पड़ेगा. और मन को रिफाइन, क्योंकि जितने साइंटिस्ट के हाइपोथेसिस है वो भी एक रिफाइंड माइंड का रिजल्ट है. फर्स्ट दे हैव हाइपोथेसिस, देन दे ट्राई टू पुट इट ऑन एक्सपेरिमेंटल मोड. तो इसलिए कठोपनिषद में ऋषि ने कहा है कि यदा पंचावतिष्ठन्ते, when your 5 sense organ exhaust, ज्ञानानि मनसा सह, then you take the help of mind. Mind means refined mind. उपनिषद में बार बार ऋषि कहते हैं कि अग्रया बुद्धिया, आप उस रिफाइंड माइंड के थ्रू ही सटल रियलिटी को कैप्चर कर सकते हैं. बट when your even mind exhausts, मनसा यदा पंचावतिष्ठन्ते ज्ञानानि मनसा सह, and buddhischana vichestati, even your intellect exhausts, tam ahu paramam gati, then start the nature of reality, ultimate reality. तो सबसे पहले हमें ये तय करना पड़ेगा कि जो साइंस के जो इंस्ट्रूमेंट है, उस इंस्ट्रूमेंट की सीमा कहाँ तक है. वर्नर हाइजेनबर्ग कहते हैं कि when we do something, it seems that nature is asking question. Nature is exposing our methodology. कि आपका जो मेथोडोलॉजी है क्या नेचर के सटल रियलिटी को कैप्चर कर पाएगा. ये हाइजेनबर्ग का स्टेटमेंट. तो हमें विचार करना पड़ेगा कि 400 वर्षों के साइंस में हमने जो क्वांटिफिकेशन और मेजरमेंट को जो बेस बनाया है, क्या ये क्वांटिफिकेशन और मेजरमेंट की सीमा कहाँ तक है, और क्या हम इवन सटल रियलिटी का जो मेजरमेंट है वहाँ तक ये इंस्ट्रूमेंट जा पा रहा है. तो ये एक इशू है जिसको हमें एड्रेस करना है. एक जो आपने दृग्दृश्य विवेक की बात की है, तो वेदांत की जो मेथोडोलॉजी है, आप समझें कि जैसे हम एक चेयर को देख रहे हैं, हम इसको जानना चाहते हैं, तो एज पर वेदांतिक अंडरस्टैंडिंग, वी द ऑब्जर्वर, यू कैन से इन हाइजेनबर्ग्स टर्मिनोलॉजी, वी ऑब्जर्वर there is something that is to be observed, and there is a process through which that can be observed. So when all three become identical, जब तीनों का तादात्म्य हो जाएगा तब एब्सोल्यूट नॉलेज आएगा. इसीलिए वेदांत परिभाषा इज ए टेक्स्ट ऑफ मेथोडोलॉजी, मेथड का टेक्स्ट है, प्रोसेस का टेक्स्ट. तो वहां क्या कहते हैं कि अंतःकरणावच्छिन्नम चैतन्यम प्रमात्री चैतन्यम. नोअर इज नथिंग बट द कंडीशनड स्टेट ऑफ कॉन्शियसनेस. देन pot or table, whatever it is, that is the state of consciousness when these gross reality conditions it. And the process through which you try to cognize it, that process is also nothing but the consciousness conditioned by the state of mental application. You know, when all three become identical, then you can understand the true nature of table. It means there is something जिसको आप constant कहें या अभी जिसको आप non-local reality है. Non-local reality means what? भगवान कृष्ण गीता में कहते हैं कि मयि सर्वमिदं प्रोतम सूत्रे मणिगणा इव. There is a क्षर ब्रह्म, there is अक्षर ब्रह्म, and there is a उत्तम पुरुष. क्षर ब्रह्म क्या है? क्षर ब्रह्म है जो फिजिकल रियलिटी है, जो चेंज करता है अपने को. अक्षर ब्रह्म है जो उसका कॉजल स्टेट है, जो उसको चेंज करने का सारा प्रोसेस जहां से शुरू होता है. और उत्तम पुरुष वो स्टेट ऑफ कॉन्शियसनेस है जो सबके मैनिफेस्टेशन में वो प्रेजेंस है उसका. परमात्म यो लोकत्रय माविश्य परमात्मेत्युदाहृतः. That state of consciousness which pervades everywhere, and that state of pervading consciousness is nothing but that actually relates everything, that gives the foundation of everything. That is the meaning of Krishna's statement, Mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. जैसे धागे के अंदर मोती पिरोया होता है और धागा हिडन है, मोती दिखता है, वैसे वो स्टेट है कॉन्शियसनेस का जो इस मैनिफेस्टेशन में भी कण कण में रहते हुए उस सब को कनेक्ट कर रहा है. फॉर द इंफॉर्मेशन ऑफ प्रोफेसर शिशिर राय जी, एक्चुअली प्रतीत समुत्पाद डजंट एक्सेप्ट इंटर रिलेशन, इट एक्सेप्ट इंटरडिपेंडेंस. यू नो, बुद्धिस्ट डजंट एक्सेप्ट इंटर रिलेशन, interdependence. It is the Vedantic position that explains what is interrelationship. और इंटररिलेशनशिप का दो ही बेस है. एक, जैसे अभी हम एनर्जी की बात करें तो जैसे आपने नासदी सूक्त की बात की, तो नासदी सूक्त को विश्व का पहला सृष्टि का सूक्त माना जाता है. इससे पहले किसी ने भी सृष्टि के बारे में बात नहीं की थी, और 7 मंत्रों में ये सृष्टि को रिवील करता है कि कैसे है. तो उसमें क्या है? उसमें कहा है कि कुछ नहीं था, एक था. आनी दबातम स्वधया तदेकम, एकम आसीत. एंड एकम आसीत वो कैसा? अपनी धारणात्मिका शक्ति से युक्त था. वो शक्ति कैसी थी? आवाज आनी दबातम स्वधया तदेकम. जो एयर है वो भी, एयर भी रिलेशन का काम करता है, लेकिन वैसा नहीं था. वो अपने ही धारणात्मिका शक्ति से युक्त था. और फिर क्या था? जो अभी डार्क मैटर की चर्चा हुई, डार्क एनर्जी की चर्चा हुई, तो डार्क मैटर को नासदी सूक्त कैसे कहता है? तम आसीत तमसा गूढ़ मग्रे. पहला जो स्टेट है उसका वो क्या है? तुच्छे नाभिहितम यदासीत. तुच्छ रूप में, छोटा सा उसका, क्योंकि ऋग्वेद में पुरुष सूक्त में स्पष्ट रूप से कहा गया है कि पादोस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतम दिवि. द ओरिजिनल स्टेट ऑफ कॉन्शियसनेस इज ऑल परवेसिव. जो ब्रह्म शब्द को हम कैसे डिफाइन करते हैं? ब्रह्म के 2 डेफिनेशन है. बृहत्तमत्वात् ब्रह्म, ब्रह्म वो सुप्रीम रियलिटी है जो सब जगह है, और ब्रह्मणत्वात् ब्रह्म जो अपने को शक्ति के द्वारा एक्सपांड करता है। तो दो स्टेट है रियलिटी का, जो वाचस्पति मिश्र ने इसको कोट किया है भामती में कि बृहत्तमत्वात् ब्रह्मणत्वात् ब्रह्म आत्मेति गीयते, और आदि शंकराचार्य ने भी इसी को लाया है। तो दो रियलिटी है, एक जो अल्टीमेट ट्रुथ, उसका ऋग्वेद का पुरुष सूक्त कहता है कि उसके एक क्वार्टर में, जस्ट लाइक एक उसका बताने का तरीका है, उसके एक क्वार्टर में ये सारा रियलिटी है जो मैनिफेस्टेशन होता है। इसीलिए ब्रह्म के दो रूप हैं, एक अपर ब्रह्म, एक पर ब्रह्म। अपर ब्रह्म का मतलब है वो स्टेट जो अल्टीमेट ट्रुथ है, और जो अपर ब्रह्म है उसका है कि उसका एक्सपांशन एनर्जी के थ्रू कैसे होता है। तो इसको लेके पूरा उपनिषद कॉन्स्टिट्यूट करता है, और इसीलिए नासदी सूक्त में कहता है कि तम आसीत तमसा गूढ़मग्रे, सबसे पहले आज की टर्मिनोलॉजी में कहें डार्क मैटर, तुच्छे नाभितम यदासीत, वो छोटा सा था एक उसके कॉन्टेक्स्ट में। और फिर क्या हुआ, कामस तदग्रे समवर्तताधि, देन देयर वॉज डिजायर, जो स्वामी जी ने कहा कि वी बिलीव इन मैनिफेस्टेशन थियरी, बट व्हाट टाइप ऑफ मैनिफेस्टेशन? मैनिफेस्टेशन मीन्स दैट सुप्रीम ट्रूथ एक्सपांड्स एवरीथिंग विद इन इटसेल्फ, एंड विद इन इटसेल्फ दैट इज नॉन एक्चुअली इवोल्यूशन। और जो अभी बहुत बड़ा जो क्वेश्चन उठा है, बहुत साइंटिस्ट ऐसा मान रहे हैं कि अंतर्यामी के कॉन्सेप्ट को वो कोट कर रहे हैं, बृहदारण्यक उपनिषद के अंतर्यामी को, कि इलेक्ट्रॉन जो है उसमें 3 लाख किलोमीटर पर सेकेंड की रफ्तार से वो चल रहा है। इज इट फ्रॉम द हेल्प ऑफ एक्सटर्नल फोर्स और इज इट फ्रॉम विद इन? इलेक्ट्रॉन को, जो न्यूटन का पहला नियम है, वो कहते थे कि जब कोई वस्तु स्थिर है तो वो तब तक स्थिर रहेगी जब तक बाह्य बल नहीं लगेगा। सेमेटिक व्यू में उसको जोड़ा गया कि गॉड इज एग्जिस्टिंग इन सेवेंथ, वो जो 7वें आसमान पे, एंड दैट इज क्रिएटिंग फोर्स, एंड दैट क्रिएटिंग फोर्स मीन्स, इस आधार पे न्यूटन ने नियम बनाया कि कोई ऐसा एक्सटर्नल फोर्स है जो एटम को रिलेट करे, क्योंकि एटम को रिलेट करने के लिए फोर्स कहां से आएगा? तो फोर्स इज जनरेटेड बाय सम आउटर जो रियलिटी, एंड देन मॉलिक्यूल एंड देन अदर थिंग्स। लेकिन जब क्वांटम फिजिक्स आया है तो क्या इलेक्ट्रॉन जो 3 लाख किलोमीटर पर सेकेंड की रफ्तार से घूम रहा है वो किस एक्सटर्नल फोर्स से घूम रहा है? ऐसा किसी को साइंटिस्ट मिला है कि कोई एक्सटर्नल फोर्स शुरू हुआ जब से इलेक्ट्रॉन में ये 3 लाख किलोमीटर पर सेकेंड से मूवमेंट आ गया? दैट वाज एक्सेप्टेड एज डायनामिक फोर्स। डायनामिक फोर्स इज दैट फोर्स विच इज कमिंग फ्रॉम विद इन, नॉट फ्रॉम आउटसाइड। यही चीज वेदांतिक जो ऋषि हैं वो कहते हैं कि जो स्वाभाविकी ज्ञान बल क्रिया च, जो श्वेताश्वतर उपनिषद आप पढ़बे, न तस्य कार्यम करणम च विद्यते, न तत्समश्चाभ्यधिकम च दृश्यते, पराश्य शक्तिर विविधैव श्रूयते, स्वाभाविकी ज्ञान बल क्रिया च। It is the natural process. It is the natural process that creates, you can say, that manifests itself into a force. That force is generating everything from within, not from outside. इसीलिए ये साइंटिस्ट ने अंतर्यामी शब्द को यहाँ लिया है। ये एक चीज है जिस पे हमें विचार करना चाहिए कि हमारा, जैसे स्वामी जी ने कहा कि अभिव्यक्ति अंदर से हो रही है, अभिव्यक्ति कहीं बाहरी हस्तक्षेप से नहीं हो रही है। तो इस चीज को हमें ध्यान देना है कि कामस तदग्रे समवर्ततादि जो नासदी सूक्त है, दैट इज कमिंग फ्रॉम विद इन, नॉट फ्रॉम आउटसाइड, बिकॉज आउटसाइड नासदी सूक्त ने कहा देयर वाज नथिंग एग्जिस्टिंग। जैसे श्रीकांत जी ने कहा कि यूनिफाइड स्टेट ऑफ रियलिटी है बिफोर बिग बैंग। व्हाट इज दैट यूनिफाइड स्टेट ऑफ रियलिटी, एंड फ्रॉम व्हाट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इट स्टार्टेड टू एक्सप्लोडिंग? जब यूनिफाइड स्टेट से बिग बैंग हुआ, जो प्लुरलिटी आई है, जो जिसको आप सुपरनोवा एक्सप्लोजन कहें या जो कहें, वो कौन ऐसा पॉइंट था जहां यूनिफाइड स्टेट जो है वो प्लुरलिटी में मैनिफेस्ट किया अपने को? तो उसके लिए कहते हैं कि उससे पहले कॉन्शियस स्टेट है। एनर्जी को हम डेड नहीं मानते, एनर्जी इज कॉन्शियस एनर्जी। व्हेन दिस एनर्जी बिकम स्टैटिक, शक्ति के दो रूप इसीलिए ऋषि ने बताए हैं। एक शक्ति का वो रूप है जो स्टैटिक में है, गुणानाम साम्यावस्था प्रधानम, गुणों का जब बिल्कुल अपने अपने नेचर में स्थित हो जाना, तो वो दैट इज द स्टैटिक नेचर ऑफ एनर्जी। एंड व्हेन इट बिकम्स फंक्शनल देन काइनेटिक, या जिसको आप कहते हैं, इसीलिए शक्ति के दो रूप हैं। एक को प्रकृति क्यों कहा है? क्योंकि प्रकरोति इति प्रकृति, जहां से प्रोसेस शुरू होता है वो प्रकृति है। लेकिन प्रकृति का एक दूसरा रूप है गुणानाम साम्यावस्था, जो गुण जब अपने आप में, जो हम तो तीन फोर्स को तीन गुण के रूप में देखते हैं कि तीन फोर्स क्या है, एक फोर्स सात्विक है, एक राजस है, एक तामस है, और इन तीनों फोर्स का जो यूनिफाइड स्टेट है उसी को हम दुर्गा जी कहते हैं। जब दुर्गा जी का मतलब है आदि शक्ति, आदि शक्ति जो, और शक्ति के रूप में सारी सृष्टि है। इसीलिए शक्ति जो है अपने को जब तीन प्रोसेस के थ्रू वो डिवाइड कर देता है, मैनिफेस्ट कर देता है, तो वो तीन शक्ति होती है। और इसीलिए तीन शक्ति जो है जब आप देखेंगे तो इसमें सत्व है, रजस क्या चीज है, कामस तद समवर्तता, काम, डिजायर, डिजायर जो है वो राजसी वृत्ति कहा है। और जब आप तीन गुणों का देखेंगे तो इसका एक जो बड़ा क्वेश्चन है जो मैं रखना चाहता हूं, जो हमारे साइंटिस्ट, जो हमारे जो रिस्पेक्टेड लोग हैं, कि सबसे बड़ा एक जो वेदांत में और सांख्य योग में जो बात आई है कि फ्रॉम एनर्जी तन्मात्रा केम इनटू एग्जिस्टेंस। व्हाट डज इट मीन तन्मात्रा? जैसे हम क्वांटिफिकेशन या मेजरमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं, तो तन्मात्रा शब्द का क्या अर्थ है? जो टर्मिनोलॉजी को लेके जो बहुत सारे हमारे अंदर कंफ्यूजन होते हैं, तन्मात्रा शब्द का अर्थ ही है कि एनर्जी से पहली बार जो फॉर्म जनरेट होता है, फॉर्म मात्रच प्रत्यय लगता ही उसी में जो आपको मेजर करता है, वो आपको कंडीशन करता है, क्वांटिफाई करता है। तो शक्ति से, जैसे स्वामी जी ने कोट किया, तस्मात् एतस्मात् आत्मनः आकाश संभूतः, आकाशाद वायु, वायुरग्निरग्निराप अद्भ्य पृथ्वी। सो व्हाट दे आर एक्चुअली तन्मात्राज। तन्मात्राज का मतलब है कि एनर्जी से वो पहला जनरेशन फॉर्म का जिसको मेजर किया जा सकता है, मेजर किया जा सकता है। तो इसलिए जो अभी एक बड़ा इशू साइंस का है कि फ्रॉम फॉर्मलेस टू फॉर्म, जिसमें गॉड पार्टिकल की बात सारी जो आई है कि फॉर्मलेस से फॉर्म कैसे होता है, इसको लेकर के एक बहुत जो अपने यहाँ चर्चा है। अपने यहाँ तो कहते हैं कि जो गुणों का जब, यानी फोर्सेज जो, ऐसे आपने कहा श्रीकांत जी ने, कि ग्रेविटेशन में कन्वर्ट होता है, ग्रेविटेशन से स्ट्रॉन्ग एंड वीक इंटरेक्शन में आता है, वहां से इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिक आता है। तो वहां शास्त्र में वो शक्ति का क्या रूप है जहां से ये फॉर्मेशन शुरू होता है, फॉर्मेशन शुरू होता है। और इसलिए हमें ये, जैसे आप गीता पढ़ लीजिए, गीता में 15वें अध्याय में भगवान क्या कहते हैं, गामा विश्व भूतानी धार्याम में हम ओजसा। जो पृथ्वी है, पृथ्वी, गाम का मतलब पृथ्वी, पृथ्वी में वो कैसे पृथ्वी जो है इंटैक्ट है, 70% से ज्यादा जल है और 30% जो मैटर है, लेकिन फिर भी वो इंटैक्ट है। तो कृष्ण भगवान कहते हैं अहम बलेन स्वबलेन, स्वबलेन अहम धार्यामि। शंकराचार्य, आदि शंकराचार्य कोट करते हैं, सदाधार पृथ्वी द्याम उतेमाम, जो हिरण्यगर्भ सूक्त आप कह रहे हैं, कि वह जो ग्रेविटेशनल फोर्स है, कृष्ण शब्द का तो एक अर्थ ये भी होता है ना, कर्षति इति कृष्ण, उसी कृष्ण से आकर्षण बना है, उसमें आ उपसर्ग लगा देते हैं तो आकर्षण है, जो सबको अपनी ओर खींच ले, उसी को तो कृष्ण कहते हैं। ये तो आदि शंकराचार्य का निर्वचन है कृष्ण का। तो जो सबको अपनी ओर खींचे, सबको इंटैक्ट करके रखे, तो इसलिए वहां कहते हैं कि येन द्योरुग्रा पृथ्वी च दृढ़ा, ये हिरण्यगर्भ सूक्त है, कि जिस शक्ति के कारण पृथ्वी इंटैक्ट है, जिस शक्ति के कारण जितने हमारा प्लैनेटरी सिस्टम है, जो हमारा गैलेक्सी है, जो हमारा यूनिवर्स है, और मल्टीपल यूनिवर्स है, तुलसीदास जी सीधे शब्द में कहते हैं कि ब्रह्मांड निकाया निर्मित माया रोम रोम प्रतिवेद कह, वी बिलीव इन मल्टीपल यूनिवर्स। तो कौन ऐसा फोर्स है जिसके कारण सब इंटैक्ट है? तो कृष्ण भगवान कहते हैं ये मेरा बल है। अभी फोर्थ फोर्स की बात हुई, तो एक बल है जो आकर्षण शक्ति है जिसके कारण ये सब इंटैक्ट है और पूरा जो ब्रह्मांड है वो इंटैक्ट है। तो ये सारे जो बिंदु हैं उन पे हमें विचार करना बहुत जरूरी है। आइंस्टाइन की मैं एक बात करके, मैं बहुत ज़्यादा, क्योंकि डिस्कशन में फिर हम चर्चा करेंगे। आइंस्टाइन को किसी ने पूछा जो आपको ईश्वर में विश्वास है? आइंस्टाइन ने कहा हाँ विश्वास है। बोला किस तरह के गॉड में विश्वास है आपको? आइंस्टाइन ने कहा कि मुझे उस गॉड में विश्वास नहीं है जो बाहर से हमें रूल करता है। हम उस गॉड में विश्वास करते हैं जो हमारे अंदर रह के हमको कंट्रोल कर रहा है। तो आप, उसने पूछ दिया फिर जो आप तो ज्यू हैं और जो सेमेटिक लोग हैं वो एक्सटर्नल गॉड में विश्वास करते हैं। तो आइंस्टाइन ने कहा कि इन दिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट आई एम नॉट ए ज्यू बिकॉज इट गोज अगेंस्ट माई एक्सपेरिमेंट। आप समझ रहे हैं? जो क्वांटम के बाद जो सारी चीजें आई हैं वो फ्रॉम विद इन आई है, वो आउटसाइड से नहीं आई है। तो इसको लेके और धर्म पे भी उनको प्रश्न पूछा, ये भी जानना है कि आइंस्टाइन क्या सोच रहे हैं इस विषय। आइंस्टाइन को किसी ने पूछा जो आप लोग तो रिलीजन शब्द यूज करते हैं, हम तो धर्म यूज करते हैं, क्योंकि रिलीजन धर्म नहीं है। रिलीजन इज बेस्ड ऑन कमांडमेंट। रिलीजन शब्द जो है वो या तो बाइबल का कमांडमेंट है या कुरान का कमांडमेंट है, और कमांडमेंट का मतलब है उसको फॉलो करना है, उसमें क्वेश्चन नहीं करना है। ब्रूनो ने क्वेश्चन किया तो उसको जिंदा जला दिया। ये विल डुरंट का पढ़िए स्टोरी ऑफ फिलोसफी में। क्वेश्चनिंग जो है वो नॉलेज ट्रेडिशन को बताता है, और जहां क्वेश्चन का राइट नहीं है आपको, वो रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट हो जाता है। इसीलिए इसको अंतर समझना जरूरी है। वेद इज नॉट ए रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट, वेद इज ए नॉलेज टेक्स्ट, बिकॉज नॉलेज कैन बी क्वेश्चन। रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट कांट बी क्वेश्चन बिकॉज दैट इज बेस्ड ऑन कमांडमेंट। वो आज्ञा है, आप मानेंगे तो हेवन जाएंगे, नहीं मानेंगे तो हेल जाएंगे। तो आइंस्टाइन को पूछा कि ऐसे वो बात करते हैं तो धर्म क्या चीज है आपकी दृष्टि से? शब्द वो रिलीजन यूज करते हैं लेकिन धर्म के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में करते हैं। तो वो कहते हैं कि धर्म मेरी दृष्टि से वो है जो एक पुस्तकालय है, उस पुस्तकालय में अनेक पुस्तकें हैं, और कोई बच्चा लाइब्रेरी में एंटर करता है और एंटर करके वो देखता है कि ये पुस्तक जो है बड़ा ऑर्डर में रखा हुआ है, इस पुस्तक को किसी ने लिखा भी है, लेकिन वो बच्चा ये नहीं जानता कि किसने लिखा है। कहते हैं कि मेरी दृष्टि में ये संपूर्ण ब्रह्मांड एक लाइब्रेरी की तरह है। एक एक चीज जो यहाँ है ये ऑर्डर में है, और हम सब जो हैं उस बच्चे की तरह हैं जो इस विश्व रूपी पुस्तकालय में हम घूम रहे हैं, और घूम के हमें लगता तो है कि सब ऑर्डर में है, क्योंकि ऋतुएं 6 बदल रही है। हमें लगता है कि 30 किलोमीटर पर सेकंड की रफ्तार से पृथ्वी घूम रही है, सूर्य भी घूम रहा है गैलेक्सी में, गैलेक्सी भी ब्रह्मांड में घूम रहा है। हम ये सब जानते हैं, लेकिन हम ये नहीं जान पाते कि ये इस ऑर्डर को किसने सेट किया, ये कैसे मैनिफेस्ट हुआ है। कहता है इस ऑर्डर को जानना, और जो मैनिफेस्ट किया है, जो फ्रॉम विद इन एवरीथिंग इज कंट्रोलिंग, आई थिंक टू नो दैट रियलिटी इज धर्म। ठीक है? और बस एक मिनट, और इसी को मैं कह रहा हूं कि जब उपनिषद के ऋषि कहते हैं यतो वा इमानि भूतानि जायन्ते येन जातानि जीवन्ति यत् प्रियन्त्यभिसंविशन्ति तद ब्रह्म तद विजिज्ञासस्व। जिससे सृष्टि हुई है, जहां सृष्टि टिकी हुई है और जिसमें सृष्टि लीन हो जाती है, इसको जानना धर्म है। ये आइंस्टाइन कैसे उपनिषद को पोजीशन बना के, क्योंकि इट वेंट थ्रू शोपेनहावर, दिस इज ऑन रिकॉर्ड। शोपेनहावर के थ्रू उपनिषद ज्ञान गया है, और उसके थ्रू वो उस सर्च को साइंस कहते हैं, और वही धर्म है। और उपनिषद का जो एक यूनिफिकेशन थियरी आई, जो श्रीकांत जी ने यूनिफाइड फील्ड के बारे में बात की, यूनिफाइड की बात की, एक लास्ट कोटेशन जो इरविन श्रोडिंजर का है, व्हाट इज लाइफ, उसकी जो पुस्तक है, व्हाट इज लाइफ में वो कहते हैं कि शोपनहावर ने जो हमें उपनिषद इंट्रोड्यूस कराया, फिजिक्स पढ़ाने के बाद मैं सारा समय लगाता हूं उपनिषद पढ़ने में, और उपनिषद में पहली बार हमें यूनिफिकेशन थियरी मिली। तो ये रिकॉर्ड पे साबित करता है कि उनका अपना स्टेटमेंट ये है कि यूनिफिकेशन थियरी वेस्टर्न ट्रेडिशन में कहीं है ही नहीं, पूरे न्यूटोनियन साइंस में यूनिफिकेशन थियरी नहीं है। तो यूनिफिकेशन थियरी अचानक मॉडर्न साइंटिस्ट के बीच में कहां से आ गई? तो ये रिकॉर्ड पे है कि ये उपनिषद के थ्रू गया है। और जॉन ए व्हीलर जैसे लोग बहुत कह रहे हैं इस चीज को कि आई वांट टू नो हाउ दिस डीपेस्ट थिंकिंग फ्रॉम इंडिया केम टू यूरोप एंड फ्रॉम यूरोप टू मॉडर्न साइंस। तो इन सब परिप्रेक्ष्य में देखें तो बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आगे हम इन बिंदुओं पे चर्चा करते रहेंगे। सभी को
Thank you, Professor Jha. Now we have some time left, a couple of questions, if one can have, can ask. You can name the panelist and.
आई थिंक मैं तो एक ऑर्डिनरी इंजीनियर हूँ, मुझे इतना समझ में नहीं आता ये साइंटिस्ट जो कॉस्मोलॉजी और जो बोल गए वो। बट जहाँ साहब मैं कुछ अभी पीच पड़ रही है मेरी, मुझे एक समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, बिकॉज बीइंग एन इसरो इंजीनियर वी यूज टू क्वेश्चन आवर साइंटिस्ट बिकॉज वी आर द हार्डवेयर डिलीवरी बॉय। इंजीनियर इज बेसिकली हार्डवेयर डिलीवरी करना होता है। So my question to all our scientists, they have been quoting about Neil Bohr, Armstrong and Einstein and all these things. And I went across couple of books. There is one Living with the Himalayan Masters. It was by Paul Brunton. Okay. And he quoted all our about the psychic and extra power of all our rishis and all these things. Like somebody who is in Banaras, Kashi, and he was communicating instantly, maybe even less than femtoseconds to...
Please come to the question.
Yeah, point is 400-500 साल पुराना जो है हमारे लोग, हमारे साइंटिस्ट, उनको क्यों कोट कर रहे हैं? मीन्स हमारे जो आर्यभट्ट, भास्कर, उन्होंने उनके अंदर गए नहीं है क्या हमारे साइंटिस्ट? दैट इज द क्वेश्चन। और इज इट बिकॉज ऑफ इट इज द वेस्टर्न मीडिया विच हैज रिटन एवरीथिंग इन ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट एंड यू आर रीडिंग and based on that you are commenting? Is it like that?
Can I respond? You know, as you told, modern science is around 400 years old. Yeah. Okay, and what we call modern science, this is European science. Okay, so naturally, when people talks about, they are talking about European scientists. But the issue is that in our education system, also in our present cultural system, there is no such change in the textbook or where the students learn. But it may be part of, history of science. But if you want to do anything more, I ask people, many people who are working, who are saying that in our traditional wisdom, there are a lot of technology which is far beyond the present technology. My question is very simple. Can you say, point out one such technology we can build up now and we can show the students and young generation, you see our present, our wisdom says something like that. So you can ask our traditional people if they can decipher one such technology.
योजन का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है, अभी एस्ट्रोनॉमी के एरिया में हम बहुत सारी चीज़ें देख रहे हैं जो, तो हमारे ऋषियों ने योजन के लेयर्स बनाए हैं। जैसे हम एक योजन की बात करते हैं उसको नर योजन कहते हैं कि इतना यदि 13 पॉइंट इतना किलोमीटर होगा तो एक योजन होगा, या जो भी उसमें वो चल रहा है। दूसरा है पृथ्वी योजन। जब हम पृथ्वी से सन की बात कर रहे हैं तो वहाँ मेजरमेंट चेंज हो जाता है। और तीसरा कहते हैं भायोजन। जब हम सन को बेस बना करके गैलेक्सी की बात करते हैं तो फिर मेजरमेंट चेंज हो जाएगा। ऐसे करके 5 योजन की चर्चा की है। हमारे साइंटिस्ट को इस विषय में देखना चाहिए कि जो मेजरमेंट का बेस हमारे ऋषियों ने बनाया है वो किस किस लेवल पे जाके बनाया है, उससे बहुत सारी चीज़ें जो हैं वो अनफोल्ड हो सकती है। ये मेरा निवेदन था।
So thing is that we, for this, we need to arrange this kind of dialogue where traditional people, they have to say, look, this is our methodology. Scientists, you can use that one, you can get a lot of new things, okay, which Western science claimed. And second thing, maybe let me comment very little about when you say that pattern, when you say form is generated from energy, there is a huge subject developed now called pattern formation and vibration. This is in nonlinear dynamics. But my question is far deeper. If you look at the Sri Chakra, the bindu is there and there are a lot of triangles are coming, and they are very specific. So, can you tell me whether there is any work starting from this kind of vibration, only these unique patterns are being generated? We are looking for that, and we are not getting it right now. And third thing, when you say electrons, inner, there is no inner and outer for electron. And Nashodhya Shukta, when you are telling about dark matter only, for dark matter, dark energy, you need concept of space and time. But as far as I understand, Nashodhya Shukta, there is no space, no time, before manifestations.
Actually, when creation process starts, जैसे श्वेताश्वतर उपनिषद में है कि ते ध्यान योगानुगता अपश्यन। पहले आप क्वेश्चन देखिए, किम कारणम ब्रह्म कुतस्म जात जानामि केन क्वच संप्रतिष्ठा। ये सारे ऋषि ने उसका एनालिसिस किया है कि कौन कौन कारण हो सकता है, और उसके बाद उन्होंने काल स्वभावो नियतिर यदृच्छा, इट इज टाइम दैट इज द कॉज ऑफ दिस रियलिटी, or it is other things. So many parameters have been given there. But finally Rishi says, te dhyan yoganugata apashyan, through this pragya, through this process, they realized, सीधे दिया अपश्यन, देखा, ये नहीं कि तार्किक उसका निष्कर्ष है। देवात्म शक्तिम सगुणैर निगूढ़ाम यह कारणानि निखिलानि तानि कालात्म युक्तान्यदितेष्टेक। जो एक से अनेक जैसे ही शुरू होगा तो टाइम और स्पेस अपने आप डेवलप हो जाता है। ये ऋषि का पोजीशन।
No. Keep it close. Keep it close.
Where we consider, say, Planck physics, where it says there exists a minimal length scale, minimum time scale, below which there is no concept of space, time and causality. So the issue is, in the everyday life, how space, time and causality emerges. This is one of the biggest challenge in 21st century physics. So if you can say something from your perspective, it's...
सिर्फ एक मंत्र बोल के खत्म करते हैं, जैसे मांडुक्योपनिषद से कि ओम इत्यक्षरं ब्रह्म तस्योप व्याख्यानम भूतम भवद भविष्य दिति सर्वम ओंकारे। One aspect of reality is within time. Yachanyatrikalatītam tadapi onkare. But the pure state of consciousness is beyond time and space.
Don't make it mystic. Vedanto nama Upanishad pramanam. It's a teaching, not something to be mysticism. It is not something to be experienced. It is something to be known. And gatyartha dhatavaha gnanartha. Even in Taittiriya, tapasa vijignasasva, tapa alochana, sa tapo tapyata, that is also knowledge. Let me conclude with 2 statements, and I want to think over, okay? This, I'll get up so I can see, and you may not have to bend yourself. Doctor used a very nice word about the order. If I define all discipline of science is nothing but trying to discover the connection between cause effect. Yeah. Okay? So think over that. And we say ultimate cause is one non-dual vastu. Second point, what is reality? In one sentence I would define, that which you cannot negate is reality. I repeat, that which you cannot negate is reality. And that which is not negatable has to be there. Third point, I'm coming to it. If something is, you also accept now. Nothing can be destroyed for good, it's only conversion of energy. That means if something is, that something will be. Correct? And fact that it is, it was. Fact that it is, it has to be there in another form. Whatever form you define. Now what decides the form of the physical object is the laws of physics. Correct? Similarly, there is an order for the universe. So how the creation came is not important for us. The idea is that it was, it is, and it will be. And that undestructible reality is the truth. That's what we are talking. You may call it a particle or whatever you call it, which again I differ it because it has to be a sentient vastu. We will talk it out when we meet for the dialogue. And I go one step further. What is, will be, and what was, what is also was. Now, modern theologists, and I feel science also, and whole India is talking about, if I ask you, are you is or is not, tell me. Are you is or is not? You have to say, I am. That means you were there before, and you will be there after. Am I right? Do you agree, yes or no?
Transformation.
I'm coming, that's what, whatever you name it, I am just saying, if you, are you is or not, I am is. Even to say I is not, you should be there. मैं नहीं हूँ कहने के लिए भी मैं होना चाहिए. अगर मैं है तो मैं था, और अगर मैं था हूँ तो भविष्य में रहूँगा. Now that is true for particles. How can it not be true for sentient being? That law that governs sentience, existence, here and hereafter and in the past, we call it order of karma. The law of karma and karma phala.
Now you use terminology karma, which we don't know.
I'll come to that. I'm just putting you one point. So punarjanma is not a matter of belief, it is a fact. It is like saying that energy doesn't get destroyed. Transformation is belief. It is not belief, it's a fact. Fact it is, it will be. In fact, I am, I'll be. People keep telling, we believe in Punarjanma. No, it is a fact. And there is a law, there is an order called Jyotisha. And last but not the least, like our allopathic science, sometimes however great or the most scholar or experienced doctor may be, so doctor can be wrong, but not the science. Similarly, Jyotishis are wrong, not the Jyotish. Yeah, please, you take the mic. Take this mic, pass it on.
Population keeps on increasing, no?
Yeah, but there are, you count mosquitoes and ants and flies and even COVID-19 bugs. The transformation of all sentient being is infinite. So it is only one kind of population which is accountable, you think, growing. And your science also has accepted the trees are also sentient being. How many? It's endless.
या मैं एक्चुअली एक बात बोलना चाहता था, थोड़ा हटके है कि देयर आर 3 वेरिएबल्स. एक है नोन नोन, फिर दूसरा है नोन अननोन्स एंड अननोन अननोन. जो अननोन अननोन है उस पर सबसे ज़्यादा ये रहता है. ठीक है. और मैं एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल दूंगा. मतलब हमको वेरिएबल इन द सेंस कि हमको क्या चीज़ क्या पता है क्या नहीं पता है. जो कुछ है हम ये पता है, नोन. फिर जो कुछ है हमको ये चीज़
So
पता नहीं.
you are telling about cause effect.
हाँ हाँ
Some known cause, unknown effect.
हाँ
Unknown cause, known effect.
हाँ.
And
then
both unknown.
both unknown.
True.
ओके. तो उस पे जैसे कि कई चीज़ ऐसे हमको ये फिलोसॉफिकली देखा जाए तो हमको ऐसे चीज़ पता है कि भाई ये ऐसा होता है, ये ऐसे किसी ने कुछ किया था, पर कैसे किया था वो हमें नहीं पता. मैं आपको एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल दूंगा, अगेन एस्ट्रोनॉमी से. ओके. एक स्टार है जिसको संस्कृत में ज्येष्ठा बोलते हैं, ठीक है, और इंग्लिश में एंटेरस बोलते हैं. अभी देखेंगे कि एंटेरस को अगर मॉडर्न टेक्नोलॉजी अगर आप स्टडी करें, ओके, it is about 500 light years away, the star, and it is one of the oldest and the biggest star. उसकी जो diameter है वो almost सूर्य और शनि का जो distance है 10-12 AU के आसपास है, ठीक है. अभी आप ये बताइए, और स्काई में ये it is about the 15th brightest star. तो इस स्टार का नाम ज्येष्ठा क्यों रखा? ज्येष्ठा का मतलब क्या है? ठीक है, जो नाम जो है उसका जो फिजिकल कैरेक्टर से एकदम मैच करता है, ठीक है. तो ये जो नाम जिसने भी रखा होगा उसने क्या इंफॉर्मेशन ध्यान में डाउनलोड किया होगा कि उसको पता चला कि भाई ये ऐसा है. तो इसको मैं अननोन.
There are, especially with reference to the first section of the Vedas, namely Karma Kandas, the first of all, what Doctor said about the law of karma and karma phala, is called as adrushta, what we call punya and papa, because it always remains unknown. Though we feel that this is the cause and this is the effect, we understand any event taking place now is infinite factors of the past. And it has an infinitude effect. Like you throw a big stone in a pool of water, it creates ripples. So they are all unknown for us. And what unknown has been revealed, see, one difference you should know, all religion claim it's a revelation. Bhagavan, God revealed, Allah revealed, and we also say. But there is a difference, what Professor said, there are dogmas about religion. We are talking of the knowledge. Even if unknown, it was, but it's a knowledge. I think Professor Guha wanted to say something.
Just a few points. So firstly, sir, your point. In this very specific context, I've mentioned very specific scientists because there's a tradition that brought about that in the modern context. But I have worked on various Indian, scientists of the past, including one book that's going to come out on Trikshayavad and quantum logic by Penguin Random House. So it's going to be published very soon. So I am very much on that front. One point that I want to be very careful about while we have these discussions is that there is a certain degree of redundancy of concept. What do I mean by that? Any phenomena which we see, in physics we see that a lot of times, especially supergravity ki jab hum baat karte hain, there are a number of theories that explain it, right? There are actually 108 theories that explain supergravity in the current sense of the term, right? All of the theories are correct in their own way, till the point we know the experimental results, right? Now, we cannot say which is which, right? Till we reach the point of divergence in an experiment which will prove which is which. Right? So the point is that there is a lot of space for speculation, right? Or conjecturing or formulations, essentially, right? Now the problem with spirituality and physics, which has always been the issue, is that there aren't any, firstly, parameters and equipments, as Ramnathji also mentioned, which do that in a consistent manner which aligns with the physicalist framework. right? Which is self-consistent in the physicalist framework, and therefore there is a divergence of sorts. Just one or 2 points. Ramnath ji mentioned about mind being faster than light. In quantum information also, just obviously we are not claiming that it's mind as such, but quantum information by itself, before we do certain measurements, is faster than speed of light. So we can have instantaneous collapse of wave functions and so on and so forth. Right? One last point about the reality, right? It's not a question about whether reality is there or not, which is also there, that debate is also there, whether there is objective reality in the first place or not. But it's the nature of reality, right? I mean, if we are not observing it, as Shishir Roy ji mentioned, right? Whether there is, what is the shape of that reality, right? Superposition, for instance, gives us very paradoxical statements, right? A cat is both dead and alive, right? That makes no sense. Right? But at the level of the superposition state, that makes perfect consistent sense. Right? So how do we explain that?
Whether reality is outside, inside, or exists, or I'm just telling you, think over. After lunch, I'll give you the answer. That which cannot be negated is reality. Don't confine it to physics. All branches are also trying to find out the truth. I have an absolute statement, that which is not negatable is reality. You please think over, and I'll answer that what it is.
Yeah, just one point. I mean, the negation itself is on parameters defined as you understand it.
Any which way you cannot negate.
But there
no
may
parameters.
be speculative negations, which I don't think apply. So anyway, we'll have
no hold.
We can have a discussion. Yes.
Any which way you cannot negate is reality, what we call as Sat. And I will define what is Sat. I'll tell you what something that you cannot negate. Let's have lunch.
Major statement. Okay, yeah.
A question last, one of our...
I think we are running out of time, Swamiji. It's 1:15. 1:15. Can we break for lunch?
Lunch is what time?
1 o'clock. It was.
We are late. We are delayed. Last question.
Namo Narayan. Dr. Jha Sahab stated about... Hello. Professor Jha said about Brahma, mind and matter and energy. One of the statements of Rigveda that defines the reality or the consciousness or which is the substratum of the universal existence. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the individual being, so is the universal being. As is the individual consciousness, so is the universal consciousness. Now about the mind is nothing but is also a gross body, a subtle body. But the matter is nothing but the energy. That's how that. Matter is a form of energy. They say one of the discussions of the Nobel laureates I was listening to that, or if the planet, what you said, the 3 lakhs kilometers of the electron
can you frame
speed
the
in the
question,
atom.
please? Question.
Your question.
Atul bhai, can you frame the question, please?
Just give your specific question.
Yeah. If you can't take away the space from the atom on this planet, then the planet, our Earth planet, is as big as a football ground, not beyond that. Now, what is the validation of the Brahma, Para-Brahma, Apara-Brahma, or Parasatya, Aparasatya in this context?
No, Apar Brahma includes state of atoms. So Apar Brahma means from causal state to this all activities, objective activities. So rishis have divided these 2 layers. One is Nirgun Nirakar, that is without any functioning. अक्रिय कहा है उसको, जहाँ क्रिया नहीं होती, क्योंकि सब जगह जो व्यापक है वहाँ क्रिया क्या होगी. जहाँ भी एक्शन है वो जो डार्क मैटर से लेकर और जो अभी तक का जो प्ले ग्राउंड जिसको आप कह रहे हैं, दिस इज अपर ब्रह्म. यू इंक्लूड एवरीथिंग विद इन अपर ब्रह्म.
You listen and study, not read. No.
अरे यार आप सब रियलिटी करते हैं. अद्वैत वेदांत है, सब कुछ मिथ्या है. मेरे सामने बैठे वो भी मिथ्या है, यहाँ बैठे वो भी मिथ्या है, जो आज तक चला वो भी मिथ्या है, लंच मिले वो सत्य है।
Thank you very much. Panelists and other dignitaries are going to have a lunch at ground floor, or volunteer will escort. And other people, invitees, can also have a lunch at ground floor in Mandapa. And we will assemble at 2:05.